Built to withstand the power of the ocean, seawalls are designed to protect coastlines from massive waves and storm surges. From towering barriers shielding cities to innovative designs that blend with nature. Join me, we're going to explore 15 of the most impressive seawalls in the world. Number 15. The Venice Mo project in Italy. The Mo project is an ambitious engineering program that's been designed to protect Venice in Italy from the increasing problems the city's facing from acqua alta, or high tides, and the storms that generate large waves. It's a system of movable barriers that are located at the 3 inlets that connect the Venetian lagoon to the Adriatic Sea. First designed in the 1980s and becoming closer to reality in the early 2000s, Mo's was conceived as a defense mechanism against tides. The system's made up of 78 large, mobile gates that are installed on the lagoon floor, and they lie flat and submerged when they're not in use, allowing ships and tidal flow to continue as normal. When a high tide or storm is predicted, compressed air is pumped into these gates, causing them to rise and form a barrier that prevents seawater from entering the lagoon. The Mo's project has, though, taken a long time to complete because of delays, cost overruns, and political scandals. Initially expected to cost around $2 billion, it's now more than tripled, making it one of Italy's most expensive developments ever. Corruption scandals in the early 2010s involving embezzlement and bribery further tarnished its reputation and caused significant delays. The project did achieve something important in October of 2020 when it successfully protected Venice during a high tide of 4.5 feet or 1.35 meters, which would have otherwise flooded much of the city. This marked the first time the barriers were deployed in a real-world scenario and provided a demonstration of their effectiveness. Environmentalists have worried about the impact of these barriers on the delicate ecosystem of the Venetian lagoon, and prolonged closure of the inlets could disrupt the natural exchange of water, affecting marine life and the quality of the water. Mo's means this can be carefully controlled and will hopefully protect Venice for decades or even centuries. Number 14. The Galveston Sea Wall in Texas. The Galveston Sea Wall in Texas in the U.S. was built in response to the devastating 1900 Galveston hurricane, which was one of the most destructive storms in U.S. history. Work on the seawalls began in 1902 with it initially stretching 3 miles or 4.8 kilometers along the Gulf Coast. Designed to protect Galveston Island from storm surges, it had a sloped face to dissipate energy of incoming waves, and this was made of reinforced concrete. It originally stood 17 feet or 5 meters tall and was built on top of a buried foundation to ensure stability. Over the years, though, the seawall has been extended further and now stretches over 10 miles or 16 kilometers in order to protect significant portions of the island's developed areas. Buildings, including homes and churches, were lifted on jacks while sand was filled beneath them, and this combined effort of the seawall and grade raising gave Galveston much more protection against any potential future events. The seawall has since proved highly effective in reducing any storm surge damage, most significantly during Hurricane Ike in 2008. While much of the surrounding region suffered extreme damage, the seawall reduced the impact on central Galveston. However, hurricanes aren't the only force the seawall contends with, and it's also slowed down the process of coastal erosion. Efforts to maintain and reinforce this structure are crucial to its continued effectiveness and will now always be needed to keep the city how it is. Number 13. The Ider Barrage in Germany. The Ider Barrage in Germany is one of the largest coastal defense structures in Europe and was designed to protect the low-lying areas of Schleswig-Holstein from flooding caused by storm surges and rising sea levels. Located where the Ider River meets the North Sea, the barrage is a critical part of Germany's coastal protection system. Built between 1967 and 73, the Ider Barrage was a response to catastrophic floods that had devastated the region, particularly the North Sea flood of 1962. The barrage is around 3 miles or 5 kilometers long, and it's made up of a set of sluice gates, a lock for ships, and a protective dam. The sluice gates regulate the flow of water between the Ider River and the North Sea, and under normal conditions the gates remain open, allowing tidal exchange and the ecological balance of the estuary. But during storm surges or high tides, the gates are closed to prevent seawater from swamping the surrounding land. The ship lock, which is 246 feet or 75 meters long, allows vessels to navigate between the river and the sea, so the barrage doesn't interfere with any shipping activities. The structure also includes a road bridge, providing a transport link for the region, and this multifunctional design means that the Ider Barrage has a role beyond being purely a flood defense system. There will, though, be an operational lifespan for the barrage before significant expansion works will be needed. Rising sea levels and more frequent extreme weather events test the limits of this existing infrastructure, and it's expected that within a few decades it'll need to be made taller and tougher if it has any chance of enduring the conditions that are expected by the end of this century. Number 12. Vancouver Sea Wall in Canada. The Vancouver Sea Wall, which is a famous feature of British Columbia's largest city, is the world's longest uninterrupted waterfront path, with a length of around 17 miles or 28 kilometers. It is a practical flood defense mechanism and a recreational space that wraps around Stanley Park and extends to areas like Cole Harbor, False Creek, and Kitsilano. Its history can be traced back to 1917, when concerns about erosion in Stanley Park encouraged the city to take action. Master stonemason James Cunningham oversaw much of the early work, which continued over 5 decades. The original section around Stanley Park was built to prevent tidal and storm erosion from damaging the park's cliffs and trees, and over the years the seawall expanded beyond its initial purpose as a barrier to become a multifunctional structure. Vancouver's waterfront remains vulnerable to storm surges, tidal forces, and rising sea levels due to climate change, and while the seawall has successfully lowered against those risks, protecting the city's infrastructure and waterfront properties, in recent years the city has undertaken studies to enhance its durability. Proposed measures include raising its height and adding green infrastructure like vegetated shorelines to absorb wave energy while supporting biodiversity. Conservation efforts, too, ensure that the seawall coexists with those natural environments, minimizing its ecological footprint, and, of course, the path provides access to cultural landmarks like the Vancouver Aquarium and the indigenous totem poles. It is proof that a seawall doesn't have to restrict the use of a coastline while protecting it, and can be designed in a way to benefit everyone. Number 11. The Plymouth Sea Wall in the UK. The Plymouth Sea Wall in the United Kingdom is an important piece of infrastructure that helps protect the historic city of Plymouth. Located on the south coast of England, Plymouth has a long history as a maritime center, making it vulnerable to the effects of storm surges, coastal erosion, and rising sea levels. The seawall forms part of Plymouth's coastal defense system, particularly around areas like Plymouth Hoe and the Barbican. Plymouth Hoe, which is a grassy headland overlooking Plymouth Sound, is home to landmarks such as Smeaton's Tower, the historic Eddystone Lighthouse, and a war memorial honoring naval battles. Plymouth's location makes it susceptible to storm surges, which can lead to flooding in low-lying areas. In recent years, events like this have been frequent and severe, necessitating continual maintenance and upgrades to the seawall. The wall not only serves as a physical barrier, but also part of a broader flood management strategy that includes tidal barriers, drainage improvements, and the restoration of natural floodplains. One of the new techniques, though, is that instead of simply adding further concrete to this wall, a new approach has been adopted. This has seen the addition of eco-friendly designs, such as textured surfaces that encourage the growth of algae and holes that sea life can live in. This has helped to sustain the life in the region, but also encourages the development of a natural barrier against waves and tidal forces, which is now seen as the most cost-effective and environmentally conscious way of doing it. Number 10. The Nampo Dam in North Korea. The Nampo Dam, which is also known as the West Sea Barrage, is at the mouth of the Taedong River near the port city of Nampo. One of the biggest pieces of infrastructure in the country, it was built for 2 main purposes: to prevent seawater and large waves from entering the Taedong River, and to secure fresh water for agricultural and industrial use. Completed in 1986, after 5 years of work, it's 5 miles or 8 kilometers long across the estuary where the Taedong River meets the Yellow Sea. It's made up of 3 main sections: a series of locks for ships, several sluice gates to control water flow, and embankments that can act as a physical barrier against the waves. The locks allow ships weighing up to 50,000 tons to pass between the river and the sea, ensuring that Nampo's port remains operational for trade and transport. The barrage has been a game-changer for flood management here. By controlling the flow of water between the river and the sea, it reduces the risk of flooding during heavy rains or typhoons, which are common in this region. This has helped protect not only agricultural land, but also urban areas along the Taedong River, including the capital city of Pyongyang, which relies on the river as a water source. As is often the case with large-scale structures like this, though, the wall has disrupted the natural ecosystem of the estuary, affecting fish migration. The dam has led to the accumulation of sediment upstream, which can reduce the waterway's navigability and means that there's a need for dredging operations. The dam's long-term effectiveness is now also in question because of rising sea levels and more extreme weather events, and in recent years there have been a number of waves that have been able to breach these defenses. Number 9. Pondicherry Sea Wall in India. The Pondicherry Sea Wall, which is along the coastline of Puducherry in southern India, is an important piece of infrastructure that protects the city from the forces of the Bay of Bengal. Built over a century ago during French colonial rule, the seawall is a historic landmark and a continuing barrier against coastal erosion and storm surges. Work began on it in the late 19th century to shield the city from the relentless waves, which were causing damage to the coastline. Made from large granite boulders that weigh several tons each, this wall was designed to absorb and dissipate the energy of incoming waves. Over time, the seawall's been reinforced and extended with the occasional addition of larger rocks to strengthen its ability. The seawall did prove its worth during events like the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, when it shielded large parts of the city from the waves. While the tsunami caused significant damage to nearby unprotected areas, this seawall controlled its impact with Puducherry, saving the community from effects that were seen elsewhere. Over the years, Promenade Beach, which once had a wide sandy stretch, has mostly disappeared due to this disruption. And with efforts being made to address the issues through beach nourishment projects, they require regular maintenance and significant investments. While it does limit natural beach habitats, the crevices between the granite boulders provide shelter for various marine organisms such as crabs, mollusks, and small fish. This has to be done carefully, however, as it's become far more than just a coastal defense. The seawall is now part of Puducherry's cultural and social life. Running parallel to the promenade, it offers a scenic walkway that attracts locals and tourists. And especially in the early mornings and evenings, you'll now see people strolling along the seawall, enjoying views of the Bay of Bengal during sunrise and moonlit nights. Number 8. The Cardiff Bay Barrage in Wales. The Cardiff Bay Barrage, which is in Wales and UK, was completed in 1999, and it turned Cardiff Bay from a tidal estuary into a large freshwater lake, which created a new region for economic, recreational, and ecological development. Covering a distance of 0.7 miles or 1.1 kilometers across the mouth of the bay, it connects to the neighboring town of Penarth and completely changed the region's landscape. Historically, Cardiff Bay had been a hub for coal export during the 19th and early 20th centuries, but its importance fell with the decline of the coal industry. By the 1980s, the area had fallen into neglect, with derelict docks and tidal mudflats that were vulnerable to the tides and waves caused by storm surges. The barrage project was part of a wider redevelopment strategy by the Cardiff Bay Development Corporation to rejuvenate the area. It's made up of several parts, with locks for shipping, sluice gates to regulate the flow of water, and a fish pass to support migratory fish species. The sluice gates control the water level within the bay, maintaining it at a constant height no matter of the tidal conditions, and by blocking waves and the inflow of seawater, it's now created a freshwater waterfront area, suitable for leisure throughout the year. There's also a hydroelectric turbine that generates green energy from the flow of water through the sluice gates, which has meant that the project has helped with the whale's sustainability needs. Aware of how this could all have major ecological impacts, though, great effort was made to support the natural ecosystems surrounding it. The fish pass, which was specifically designed to assist migratory species like salmon and eels, was included to make sure the barrage didn't destroy the local ecosystem. There's no doubt that the barrage's impact on Cardiff has been transformative. The creation of a stable, non-tidal body of water has revitalized the waterfront, paving way for a host of developments, including the Wales Millennium Centre, the Welsh Parliament Building, and a number of residential and commercial spaces. The area now attracts millions of people each year with attractions like water sports, boat trips, and cultural events, and it's been vital to rebranding Cardiff as a modern, dynamic capital city. Moving on to number 7, Afsluitdijk in the Netherlands. The Afsluitdijk, or Closure Dyke, is one of the Netherlands' biggest ever engineering projects, and it's one that shows the country's long battle with water. Built between 1927 and 1932, the Afsluitdijk covers a distance of almost 20 miles or 32 kilometers across the Wadden Sea, connecting provinces of Friesland and North Holland. The wall serves a number of purposes, protecting the Dutch interior from flooding due to storm surges and tidal activity. It separates the saltwater Wadden Sea from the freshwater IJsselmeer, and it also supports vital infrastructure and the natural environment. The idea for it was first put forward in the late 19th century by engineer Cornelius Lely, who proposed transforming a shallow inlet of the North Sea into a freshwater lake to protect the surrounding low-lying land. This vision became a reality after the catastrophic floods of 1916, which showed the urgent need for flood defenses. Made from mainly boulders, basalt, and sand, the Afsluitdijk was well ahead of its time, and workers used innovative techniques to ensure the structure could withstand the forces of the sea. The dike is reinforced with concrete blocks and features a sloping design to absorb wave energy, and its crest reaches over 24 feet or 7.25 meters above sea level, ensuring it can protect against even the most severe storms and waves. By closing off the Zuiderzee, it created Isdjelmeer, which is a large freshwater lake that's fed by rivers like the Igesel. This provided a stable water source for agriculture, drinking water, and industry, while also enabling the reclamation of new farmland through poldering, which is essentially a low-lying piece of land that's created by barricading the ocean and would otherwise be completely submerged. In recent years, the Afsluitdijk has undergone extensive upgrades to address modern challenges. The Dutch government launched a major renovation project in 2018 to enhance its durability, with measures including the raising of its height, the reinforcement of its structure, and adding floodgates to handle extreme water flow. A fish migration river has also been introduced to allow fish to move between the freshwater and saltwater, so ecosystems can continue to thrive even with such a major blockade in the way of their usual routes. Number 6. The Guyana Sea Wall. The Guyana Sea Wall is a vital defense structure in Guyana, which can be seen along the country's Atlantic coast. Stretching for over 280 miles or 450 kilometers, the seawall was a huge feat of engineering, but one that was necessary in a country where low-lying coastal areas are constantly at threat from the sea, with tidal forces, storms, and large waves being a particular concern. It was initially built during British colonial rule and continues to protect densely populated areas and agricultural land. As much as 90% of Guyana's population lives along the coastal plain, which lies below sea level at high tide. This region is the economic heart of the country, home to Georgetown, the capital city, as well as important agricultural and industrial industries. Without the seawall, the Atlantic Ocean's water would inundate the area, causing devastating damage to homes. Initially made of simple earthen embankments and wooden barriers, the seawall was later fortified with stone and concrete as the threat of flooding became more severe. The structure was designed to act as a barrier against the waves of the Atlantic, so had a sloping design that helped to dissipate wave energy. Over the years, the seawall's been upgraded and expanded a number of times to make sure it can handle the changing pressure it faces. Rising sea levels have made the job of maintaining and improving the seawall more important, with increased tidal surges and unpredictable weather patterns threatening to overwhelm it. So far, though, it's been a success and continues to protect the communities of the country. It also had a surprising ecological effect, whereby it's provided habitats for various marine and bird species. Mangrove reforestation efforts along the coastline have also become a new way of reinforcing the wall, because these act as natural buffers against the waves, reducing erosion but also protecting biodiversity. Number 5. The Marina Barrage in Singapore. The Marina Barrage is a great example of modern engineering that's been used to protect communities and to provide greater control over water management. Found at the mouth of the Marina Channel, it was officially opened in 2008 as a project by Singapore's Public Utilities Board. At its core, the Marina Barrage is a dam that crosses the Marina Channel and created Singapore's 15th reservoir, the Marina Reservoir. This reservoir is unique, though, because it's formed by a combination of fresh water from the city's catchment areas and rainfall. By damming off the channel, the barrage prevents seawater from waves and this tidal action from entering the reservoir, ensuring that there's a stable supply of fresh water. This contributes significantly to Singapore's 4 national taps, which is a strategic framework for ensuring the country's water security through different sources. Singapore is a densely populated island, and it's highly susceptible to flash floods during heavy rains and storm surges from the ocean, especially in low-lying areas. This barrage controls the risk by acting as a tidal barrier, and its system of 9 crest gates can be lowered during low tide to release excess storm water. A series of high-capacity pumps can also quickly drain water from the reservoir into the sea when rainfall coincides with high tide, further protecting against the risk of flooding. While it does have clear functional uses, the Marina Barrage has become a vital part of the city since opening entirely in different ways as well. The Marina Reservoir, for example, has enabled the development of water sports such as kayaking and dragon boating, promoting an active lifestyle while making use of the city's waterway. The barrage itself is also a recreational center, adding to Singapore's reputation as a city in a garden. Its green roof, which covers the entire length of the wall, has become a favorite spot for locals and tourists, as from there, you can lie back and relax with some incredible views of the Singapore skyline. Number 4. The Tohoku Sea Walls in Japan. Tohoku Sea Walls in Japan represent one of the world's most ambitious coastal defense systems. They were built to protect vulnerable northeastern coastline of the country from devastating tsunamis and storm surges. Covering a distance of over 250 miles or 400 kilometers, this network of seawalls was designed and expanded following the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami of 2011. Japan has a long history of dealing with tsunamis because of its position along the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a region that sees intense seismic activity. Coastal seawalls in Japan date back to the early 20th century, with modest seawalls built to protect small fishing villages from moderate waves. Over time, these defenses evolved into taller and more extensive systems as engineering techniques advanced. But while many communities thought their preparations were more than enough, the 2011 tsunami revealed the limitations of the existing seawalls, with many of them being overwhelmed by the sheer size of the waves, some of which reached heights of over 130 feet or 40 meters in certain areas. The Tohoku Sea Walls are then arguably the most advanced tsunami defense structures ever built. They're made up of massive reinforced concrete structures, some reaching heights as high as 46 feet or 14 meters, and are designed to absorb and dissipate the energy of incoming waves. The walls are anchored deeply into the ground to withstand the immense pressure of a tsunami, and in some areas double-layered seawalls have been built with the outer layer facing the ocean and an inner layer providing a secondary level of protection. Materials like high-strength concrete and steel reinforcements were chosen for their durability and longevity, and the seawalls were further integrated with natural features like sand dunes and vegetation to create a multi-layered defense that works in harmony with the environment. Such huge structures have, though, completely altered the natural landscape and disrupted marine ecosystems. These tall, imposing walls block the scenic views of the ocean, which are an important part of the cultural and emotional connection many coastal residents have with their surrounding. The project was also pretty expensive, with a final cost estimated to be in excess of $12 billion. This continues to be the subject of debate, with many questioning whether the resources could have been better allocated to alternative strategies, such as relocating communities to higher ground. But with conservative estimates of the cost of the event in 2011 being upwards of $220 billion, that investment was surely worth it. Many coastal towns have built elevated shelters and escape towers to add to the protection of the seawalls, and urban planners have implemented zoning measures restricting development in high-risk areas and encouraging communities to be far more prepared if it ever happens again. Number 3. The Thames Barrier in the UK. The Thames Barrier, which is built on the River Thames in London, is one of the world's largest movable flood barriers. It was built to protect the city from tidal surges, waves, and flooding, and the barrier is a central part of the UK's flood defense system. Since it was completed in 1982, it safeguarded London's population, landmarks, and economic infrastructure from growing threats posed by climate change and rising sea levels. The Thames Barrier was designed after the devastating North Sea flood of 1953, which caused widespread destruction along the east coast of the UK. London, which is in a very low-lying area of the Thames floodplain, was seen as particularly vulnerable to similar events, and especially with the growing urban population, it was clear that a reliable flood defense mechanism was needed, not just for the predictable tidal patterns, but for potential extreme events. The Thames Barrier is 1,700 feet or 520 meters across the river near Woolwich, and it's downstream from central London. Its design is made up of 10 steel gates that are supported by concrete piers. The gates, which range in height from 50 to 66 feet or 15 to 20 meters, can rotate upwards to block the river or lie flat on the riverbed when not in use. Each gate is hollow, made of steel, and filled with water to stabilize it when it's being used. The structure was designed like this to allow water navigation and flood prevention. When a surge or a strong storm is forecasted, the gates are raised to block the incoming tidal flow, creating a barrier that prevents the surge from traveling upstream. Once the surge is passed, the gates are lowered to restore the normal flow of the river. Since it became operational, the Thames Barrier has been raised over 200 times to protect London from flooding. Its effectiveness had been seen in a number of extreme weather events, including the storm surge of 2013-2014, which was one of the most severe in recent history. Although it was originally designed with a projected operational lifespan until about 2030, recent assessments suggest that it may remain effective until around 2070, thanks to conservative design parameters and upgrades. Long-term plans are, though, already being developed to ensure London's flood defenses remain as effective into the next century, with the Thames Estuary 2100 plan, developed by the Environment Agency, outlining strategies for addressing future risks. Number 2. The Grandf Port Breakwater in Iraq. The Grandf Port Breakwater, which is located in southern Iraq near the city of Basra, is a huge engineering project that forms part of the Grandf Port development. Designed to be one of the world's largest ports, the Grandf project is an initiative to transform Iraq into a major player in the global shipping industry by connecting the Middle East to Europe and Asia via the Arabian Gulf. Iraq's geographic location means it's in the ideal place to be a valued stopover for international trade, offering a direct link between the Gulf region and Europe. The Grandf Port project aims to change this by creating a modern, high-capacity port that can handle massive cargo volumes and serve as a transit port for goods moving across continents. At a cost of more than $1 billion, it's made up of two massive structures, the Eastern Breakwater and the Western Breakwater, which together stretch over 12 miles or 19 kilometers. The Eastern Breakwater alone, which was completed in 2018, is around 9 miles or 14.5 kilometers long, making it the longest breakwater in the world. Built using millions of tons of rock and concrete blocks, the breakwater is engineered to withstand the marine environment and ensure ports' operational safety. The breakwater includes features such as wave dissipators and a slope designed to absorb and deflect wave energy, so it's as effective as it possibly can be with the technology that's currently available. The Italian engineering company Trevi Group played a major role in constructing the breakwater, working alongside local contractors and engineers to deliver the project, and without it, the Grandf Port project would be impossible. Now though, with the breakwater in place, Iraq will be able to compete with major ports in the Gulf region, such as Jebel Ali in Dubai and Hamad Port in Qatar. The port's location will allow Iraq to reduce its reliance on neighboring countries for access to shipping routes and provide a shorter alternative to the Suez Canal for goods traveling between Asia and Europe. Number 1. The Suwon Sea Wall in South Korea. The Suwon Sea Wall in South Korea is part of the country's land reclamation and development project, and it's located on the west coast of the Korean peninsula near Gunsan. The seawall is 21 miles or 33 kilometers in length, making it by far the longest man-made seawall in the world. Completed in 2010 after nearly 2 decades of work, the seawall has turned a tidal estuary into a large reservoir and reclaimed land. It was part of a larger project which began in 1991 with the aim of converting 155 square miles, or about 400 square kilometers, of tidal flats and shallow waters into arable land and freshwater reservoirs. This endeavor was designed to address South Korea's needs for agricultural expansion, economic growth, and regional development. The main goals of the project were to provide farmland for food security, create freshwater supplies, and encourage economic activity. Work on the seawall began in 1991, and it was finally completed in 2010, involving extensive dredging, landfilling, and the placement of millions of tons of materials. The project required new techniques and careful planning to address environmental, geological, and engineering challenges. So, for example, geotextiles were used to stabilize the soft seabeds, and the sluice gates were equipped with advanced systems to manage water levels and salinity. In total, the entire project cost more than $3 billion, with almost $2 billion spent on just the seawall. The government there now sees Suwon as a global center for green industries, including solar and wind power, with plans to establish extensive renewable energy facilities in the region. Perhaps, though, a problem with this, of course, is that it's impossible to complete a project on this scale without at the same time having a lasting impact on the natural environment. The reclamation of tidal flats disrupted vital ecosystems and displaced habitats for migratory birds, shellfish, and other marine life. There have been attempts to overcome these issues with initiatives like creating artificial wetlands and establishing conservation areas, but it will likely be years until it's clear whether those have had any impact. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.